Oh, all right. Welcome everybody to Sin Dieta. Just quick disclaimer, this is a podcast for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical, nutritional, legal, or any other professional advice. The content is not intended to replace professional advice, and it is recommended that you seek advice from a qualified professional if you have any concerns. Listener discretion is advised for younger listeners. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not reflect any of those of any employer, organization, or sponsor. And I'll go ahead and toss it over to Christina.
All right, thanks for joining us again, y'all. I'm like trying not to giggle a little because in introducing us, I think of how we were prepping for this yesterday, and we're basically going into this as a soft talks con Sin Dieta type of segment. And I giggle because when we were talking about the names, we were like, "Oh, look, that sounds like Vero was saying soft tacos." So my notes literally say soft tacos. But anyways, I am Christina, a registered dietitian, she, her, ella pronouns. We've got with us Nico, who is our lovely nurse practitioner, she, her as well. Stacy, therapist, LMFT, she, her, and Vero, therapist as well, she, her, ella. We're all here just kind of like going into a informal conversation, talking a little bit about our thoughts over a few questions just to kind of help us stay focused. But looking forward to just kicking off the chat with, like our first question lined up was really about like when you think about the phrase strong Latina, which maybe like a little bit of an assumption, but maybe not complete. Like I think many of us have heard that be thrown around. I'm wondering like what emotions come up for all of us. Is there anything that like really gets invoked in you, whether it's good or bad, or you just don't know how to feel about it?
Hmm. I think I'll kick
It's
it
like we
off.
didn't read the questions yesterday.
I know. This is what the soft talk's about, though, right? We're getting to the rawness. I think when I hear like strong Latina, like for me, I think for me personally, the first thing that kind of comes up is like, I don't think this was like created by our people. Like I think this was kind of like placed on us, um, because of the struggles and just kind of the adversity that, just generationally, I think like we have faced, and I think we just kind of have embraced it, right? And it's really kind of evolved with the way that life has been going, and just kind of with different climates and political climates and things like that have been also kind of happening. That's kind of my take. I
Mhm.
don't know. I'm curious because I don't know,
Yeah.
Stacy, you were gonna say something
Yeah,
right
I'll kind
before
of
I
jump
jumped in.
off from that. Yeah, because I think the word, like, I think Latinas in general, yes, are strong. Like, I do associate those things, but like
Hmm.
adding the strong Latina makes it feel more like it's something that's put upon us. So, like,
Yeah.
kind of like how, like, the stereotype of like Black women were like they have a higher pain threshold, right? So
Mm.
then they can be strong because they can deal with it all. And I think similar to like, oh, a strong Latina, it's like, it's that like, are we having to be strong because of the systems, or are we just like strong inherently, which we are, but it more so feels like, well, we have to be too. Like we have to show
Hmm.
up as a strong Latina, because if we're shown as like meek or quiet or weak, then we get treated poorly. But I think like, we are inherently like, I think just like strong individuals, but that doesn't necessarily take away from like softness.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's sometimes missed, where it's like, oh, they're like a fiery Latina, or they're like a spicy Latina. And it's like, but we're also like really like, yes, and we're also like soft. But like you
Hmm.
only stereotype us as this, which I think allows people to treat us more harshly.
Mhm.
Um,
I don't know if
but
you ever noticed this, but too, like with what y'all were saying, I feel like sometimes people almost egg us on. Also, like if we're not being really firm and like talking back or whatever, it's like oh, let me see what I can do to push your buttons.
mhm.
And I don't know, that can feel really like Like you're just being put on display to perform.
Mm-hmm.
Or test
Yeah.
it if you end up being soft, right? 'Cause when you said what emotions, I'm like, I feel exhaustion hearing that. Like that's expected of me. There's already a lot put on our plates or my plate, and then that pressure to be strong and still pushing through and resilient. Then it's like, why is that expectation still set? Or why can't I be soft strong, like a soft strong Latina? And I think I see that around with folks too, right? Where it's to the point of feeling like you break down and then you have an illness or a mental health issue. And so sometimes I can set such an expectation that is not always easy to achieve. And sometimes we need to lean on others too for support.
Mm-hmm.
I think also what kind of came up for me is like strong Latina, like it's almost we kind of have to like ask permission to like not hold this like when in those moments when it's like we cannot live up to this because it's a really unrealistic, I think, kind of expectation, societal expectation to kind of put on us, right? And it's almost like this is probably one of the many reasons, right, why, my mom probably cried by herself in her room when things were like really hard, right? Because she felt like she needed to be strong, like that strong woman figure for her daughters and for everybody else. But she, inside maybe needed to kind of let it out and give up or put that strong Latina to the side and just like, sit with herself in that softness and in whatever other emotion kind of came up for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe we
I
can
think because
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think we can redefine what strong means too, right? Because what we are experiencing and think about it, that's pretty common in that interpretation of strong, but maybe it's more now we can change that to being, we are asking for help. We can have our ups and downs with our own like mental health, but we're able to stand in the middle of our groundedness. And then that's what strength could be. So, that can be seen in different ways, right? Crying in the room. All right, I need that to feel settled. I'm strong with that.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's labeled as such almost like as a marketing thing, right? Like, oh, we're a strong Latina. You know what I mean? And like it is, I think the intention at some point was empowering, but it also is like, well, who is that for? Like, who is this description of us for? And is it to become more marketable to who? Right? Like if we're seen as this, strong Latina or whatever, it's like, well, like why do we need to be identified as such? Because we wouldn't be like, oh, that's a strong white person.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't, it doesn't even make sense to say it like that. It's like, oh, they're a strong white person. It's like, what does that even fucking mean?
Yeah.
But I think for a Black and brown individual, that's used similarly.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what, I think it's, similar to like, well, they can tolerate a lot. So we can put a lot on them because they don't break and they're strong. But I think going back to like, the softness is like, I don't want all those things. I don't want to be head of household as a sole person when there's other people in the house.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be the sole person when it's me in my own house.
Yeah.
But it's like I think someone said it about like that gets in the way of like asking for help. I always I think of that movie Encanto, where it's like the older sister, like the strong Latina, and like what that looked like. And I think that was a good illustration of like what happens when that like title is put on you and then it stays with you.
Yes. Then those expectations also stay with you and they follow you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get parentified very young and you internalize that. Yeah.
Good point, Christina.
So then by the time we're like dealing with and questioning our parents, the previous generation, like they never got that chance to be the child, to not have to care for and make sure others survived. And so all they know is strong. But like, where do they even start by asking for permission? A lot of times it's probably like maybe even feeling a little guilt or shame to like express that to your children because you don't want to burden them.
Yeah. Makes me think of like gender roles too. Like as a kid, like I've seen people who've had like siblings, like boys and girls, and seeing how the girl in that scenario does essentially the same things. And I'm like, oh, they get served first, regardless of direct or indirect, right? Like the messaging we've seen is like, oh, the girl will serve the food to the men at the table first, or they'll be the ones to pick up the plates, or they'll be the ones to like set house. And how that, how that, I don't know, gets what's the word? Oh my god. How they become parentified so early.
Yeah.
But it's like parentified and also just like a woman role early. Adultified.
Second mama.
Second mama-fied. Yeah.
We are making the words today. But it is true. And I remember like even just like my own experience, like growing up, like my mom she would serve my dad, and then she would serve like the kids, and then whatever was left over, like that's what she would eat. I'm like, girl, like sometimes there wasn't like a lot of stuff left over, like that's all you're gonna eat, So I think that also, like just kind of you bringing that up, Stacey, like that just sends messaging, right? And again, the expectation in like the household was like, okay, my mom, even though like she probably didn't have much to eat, like she still had to like make sure she was strong and like clean the house, do the other expectations that were expected of her in her role as a strong Latina, as a mom, as a wife, right?
Yeah, and I like the word you put, Christina, or someone put it, resistance, like the resistance we might have, or we've like expressed to that term, right? And like how in our own ways we probably have like resisted literally, like actually stop doing certain things that we were acculturated to do as like needing to be in it, regardless if we labeled it like that, but like without being like strong Latina.
Yeah. I wonder too if like in the similar vein, like how do compliments about our weight, appearance function in our communities, even when they're supposed to be a way of showing love and, oh, I want you to take care of yourself type of thing. That's how I remember them being expressed, right? Like they're like, oh, you need to like be careful, like don't eat too much because then you'll gain weight, and they like lightly pain on like it's about your health, but they like very like they go hard on the then like where are you gonna find a husband, and like you need to make sure you have someone. It's like what?
I have like all my tias running my mind right now when you're saying that, Christina. Like, damn you, tia.
Well, we see that like all the time with our clients, right? When they have a higher weight goal than the parents really feel comfortable with, right? Like we obviously know like the client doesn't. This is what obviously I'm talking about minors, but like the client's not going to want to gain weight because that's part of their diagnosis. But like when the parents are like, isn't that a little high? Like, well, we don't want them to get picked on. We don't want them to be, called names or be seen as different. Well, isn't that unhealthy? Like they bring in their own learned concerns about health, right? Like they grew up in the probably like what 70s, 80s, 90s. Like they heard the same messaging we did, if not worse. And like they're showing that of like, well, this is me showing concern for my kiddo because I don't want them to be unhealthy and I don't want them to be picked on at school, which are like valid, right? We want your kid to be healthy. We don't want them to be picked on at school. But is that like, if it's through love, like I think that's what makes it so tense sometimes in those rooms of having to be like, is there another way to love on your child? Because this way is actually creating more harm, even though it's well intended.
That's when I try to, because my mind goes this way. I'm like, all right, let's like zoom out, macroscopic kind of view of like, where is this all coming from with all these little clusters of examples and families? What's the systems-based foundation or history? I'm throwing the history thing there, like why this has begun to be such a thing. And I think that's where it can make a lot of sense, especially for our populations of like needing to survive, acculturate, fit in, not just health to be alive as long as you want with the basis of what they think health is, but just be safe in this community. And so I think that's the effect it has with community, is that it feeds into this expectation of being safe and being with everyone and being in community. So again, another way of maybe redefining what can safety and community be like, what can we unlearn? That way it can trickle down within families of how we see weight, how we see health.
Yeah. especially depending on who lives in the house, like how are we going to like share the education that we're taking in? Because I agree with Stacey that like this can come up often in our younger populations, but even with adults too, like they could push back because they're like, well, I literally still live with the person that has the concern over my weight, right? Like, what are they going to say when they see my body changing? And then it calls to like, how do we bring them in to make sure your environment is safe? So that it gives you that flexibility.
Yeah. I think too, when it comes to like weight, even like weight gain, when we think of like, if Latinas are already kind of treated older than we are, right? Like when our bodies start to develop, how that like adds into the like, people will say comments that are like intended to be like a compliment, but are like also just like weird and like inappropriate. Right, like, oh, your curves are coming in, or like, you know, other things that I won't necessarily say, but we can put those pieces together where it's like we're like stereotyping basically of like the body and like what that means, like, oh, or like what's that phrase people say, like, oh, you're gonna be trouble for the boys and like shit like that. And so I think of that like when we talk about like either just appearance and how it functions in our communities, especially if, you know, the stereotype Latina is like more curvaceous, right? And like how that shows up in unintended ways.
A lot of, I think that adds that layer of like kind of like sexualizing, right, us, and just really like kind of putting that lens on there, even to like our, like I think back in like those comments, like they are being said like within our communities, and like, yeah, maybe they're not intended to like mean like negative things, but they're kind of creepy. Like if we think of it, like just kind of like hearing it now also, and just the impact that it can have, it's like we're essentially kind of putting that unspoken expectation of like, oh, you know, because your body is developing a certain way, like maybe you gotta act a certain way, or maybe you gotta, you know, move a certain way. That's a lot, you know, for young girls and for anyone in general, right? Because the same goes for guys, right? For like the men in our community, they're like, oh, you know, like, mira, ya estás bien barbón, like, mira, qué guapo, you know, like they get a lot of that too. Yeah.
I'd say, yeah, it's kind of the question of the how is the messaging of love portrayed for people who struggle with different shapes and sizes? How can we guide folks who don't know what to say? Because I'm thinking too with folks in recovery, even myself, when I used to struggle, and everyone knows not to comment about me, whether my weight went up or down. So then they would say, you're not too fat or too thin. Like they're just trying to keep neutrality. But it's like, but it's still, you're saying something about my body. Let's
you're bringing attention.
You're still bringing attention there rather than like maybe addressing the underlying challenge I'm having mentally with stress. So and giving guidance on that. Like there's no like, okay, I can't say you're too big or too little. I'll just say you're just right. I'm like, no, that's just disconnect it from the body.
Yeah. Like how do we maybe compliment, like, I don't know, I picked a nice shirt out today, or like a color that looks nice, or like things like that. Like how do we,
you're just so you're like, oh, you shared such a funny story, or like, wow,
how do we make it about that? And I think too, when it comes to like the compliments around like weight loss, and people are like, oh, you look so good, the assumption is that it was like in a healthful way, right? Like there's typically no hesitation to think that it might be illness, any type of illness, right? It doesn't just have to be like an eating disorder, right? And like how it's been interesting as like an adult to like think of it now more of like, okay, how are they acculturated, right? Because I think when I was like a younger therapist having clients whose like parents would come in and like say some like wild shit into treatment of like, oh, like kind of like what Nico said, like they would say something that was like supposed to sound like in the middle, like, oh, you look so like much healthier, and like obviously the client was like, I'm getting fat.
Yeah.
And would like spin out of, you know, spiral with that. But it's like being able to be like, okay, like why are we using that as a compliment when you know that this happens? Like actually having the conversation, I think now more prepared as like an older adult, of being able to be like, even just people in like my circle, not necessarily just with my clients, of like, okay, like, hey, like that's a funny comment to make. Of like, oh, what made you think to say that?
Yeah.
Like, oh, do you associate those two things, right? Like anytime someone is like, oh, like, because I'm a straight size person, so anytime someone's like, oh, like, how do you like keep your shape or do X, Y, or Z, and I'm like having to figure out like how do I slow them. Is it a person that I want to slow down? Like, do I actually care about them?
Yeah.
But if it is, it's like, yeah, how do I give? How do I ask them, or not ask them, but like say something to have them reflect on like why that
Mhm.
comment might not be.
Yeah. Like a gentle challenge or a gentle inquiry, like
Mm-hmm.
so they can learn or revisit
Yeah.
how they're saying things like that.
Yeah, because like even if it's genetics or if it's food related, it's like that's not going to copy and paste anyways, right? But that's the beliefs. That's why like those what I eat in the day videos are so popular, is because there is this assumption, well, if I eat like that, I will look like this,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? And so like how to like start not remove it from our community, but like have people like really think about it a little bit more, because I think we, any other culture that's different from like the predominantly white culture is like our bodies don't look like that. And even within white culture, their bodies all don't all look the same, but it's like, why do we think that we will look like them by eating, especially when we're eating their food?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not even eating food that necessarily goes, well with our bodies.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I think we address a lot of like the when tension happens and how we're trying to help our clients navigate that. I think the next part that pulls into is like what conversations about mental health and how to fix your relationship or work on your relationship with your body, with eating, do we wish adults had normalized, either like for the people that we're working with or even like for our own experiences.
That's a crazy one.
Good question.
Right? Because it's like, as an adult now, yeah, what do I want to normalize?
I think
That's
just
how I think of it.
expression. I would say expression of any emotion, even the intense ones that make people uncomfortable, like permission to feel it and honor that and learn how to work with it versus trying to shove it down. I think of that when I was little. Like I used to be very loud and boisterous, and then I would always be told like to be quiet. And so like I think in hindsight it would have been nice to just have had permission for it and given guidance. And maybe that's just because parents themselves didn't grow up knowing how to handle it. It's passed down, obviously. So I think that's the biggest, is just permission of self-expression of emotions.
Yeah. That's so interesting because I feel like the opposite, where I was like so quiet, and I think it was because like I was scared of saying something, because I think that was like formed in larger picture by like the reactions I saw other people get, right? Like if you do speak
By
up,
proxy.
exactly, like what's gonna happen, or the jokes that come along that were like, oh, they weren't meant to be like hurtful, or like it wasn't that deep, but now it's getting painted as you're the one that's too sensitive, you didn't know how to take it. And yeah, that's always hard.
Yeah.
I agree though. Emotional regulation is a big one that we could have benefited from seeing be taught.
Do you think about all your daily activities? It connects with that too. Like, can I eat or do I not eat? How do I function focusing and socializing at school? How do I communicate if I don't even know what I'm feeling?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think maybe
When
like
I
I think of separating like the body versus worth. Like I think it's fair that like people have like poor body image days because of like how the messages we're really inundated with on like a pretty daily incessant basis. But I think it's more so like, how do we separate that from like who we are as a person? Because I think a lot of like regardless, I'm talking to like weight and performance, because like I did sports all growing up, and so like the tie to like how I look to how equals how I perform in sports, and like being able to like more so think of it of like, yeah, if I want to throw further, I probably should put more muscle on my body, opposed to like, well, you're too skinny, you need to just gain weight, because if you don't gain weight, you're not going to be good, right? And like having it like that versus yeah, like, okay, like let's, if this is our goal, how do we get to our goal? Okay, like let's then do some like, I don't know, bench press, or well, I don't know, whatever the workouts are. But like being able to like separate that from like who I am versus it being like a success or a failure if I achieved it.
Mm.
I
And
like
so
that.
I think that's what would be, yeah, like helpful to be what would be or would have been helpful when I was younger, to have them normalize a little bit of like, yeah, like if this is, like I was also pretty tall like as a kid, so it was like, yeah, there were certain sports I had an advantage for and certain sports I didn't have an advantage for, and like making it about like, well, you can still be good at these things, but it's just that you have to do X, Y, or Z. It's not just about like weight gain or weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to piggyback a little bit off of that, Stacey.
Mhm.
I think for myself, my own experience like growing up, especially like around like body image, mine was like really tied to it's like I was a bigger kid growing up. Like I was like in a bigger body. So for me it was like health and my size. Like those two were like tied so much that like I remember in the third grade going to the Kaiser, and yes, I'm calling Kaiser out. Going to Kaiser and having like the pediatrician tell me like I was like obese, and then they sent me to like a nutrition class, and I was like, what is this
Mm.
plastic cottage cheese that you guys are like showing me that I have to like put in my like that I have to eat on my plate? I was like, I don't even eat cottage cheese. I eat queso fresco. Like, what is this? So I think for myself, like I got a lot of messaging in that time from my health providers of like, if you're this size or you're above this or your BMI is this, like you're not healthy. And I remember looking at my pediatrician, and she's listening. I'm sorry, but I was like, girl, you are just same size, if not a little bit larger. Like, are you taking the class with me? Because that's the messaging I was getting, right? And then as I've gotten older, I've recognized like the size of your body doesn't determine your health. And that's something that like I think we need to talk a little bit more about, especially like in our community, because that's like, really big. And we get like opposite messaging. Like when we're little, when we're babies, they're like, oh, está llenita, está gordita. Like they're eating, they're healthy. And then as like you get
Mhm.
older, it's like it switches up real quick. And that messaging right there, that turnaround is
Mhm.
like crazy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was thinking of like
yeah.
pancita versus panza. Like pancita
Yes.
was like cute, and like when babies have it, you're like, oh, little pancita. But then people are like, oh yeah, you need to get rid of that panza. Like
Yes.
it
Mm-hmm.
switches so fast. And
Yeah.
so even just like I remember like certain adults would like, wear, what are those things? Fajas, right? Like wear the
Yes.
fajas, or like not want to wear certain clothing that like showed their arm or showed their thighs, or they would like literally cover up. Or if I remember one of my aunties had just had a baby, and so the stomach is like really soft, and going in like, kids will like go and touch it because it like
Hmm.
looks soft, and like the instead of just being like, oh yeah, that's where the baby was and whatever, like having to feel like you have to cover it or hide it or have to feel embarrassed by it. I feel like I see
Mm.
a lot, or like hear a lot from people who have either had babies or have kids really, and then have skin that looks different, and then the kid is just interested of like, oh yeah, this is soft and this is squishy, and the parent is just like trying
Hmm.
maybe not
Mm-hmm.
to say something or like to hide it, but it is still hard because the messaging is so prominent of like, you should snap, what is it called, snap back?
Snap back.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, like snap back after childbirth, which is a
Mm-hmm.
crazy thing
That's
Mm.
altogether.
crazy.
That is a
Yeah.
whole
That's a crazy expectation and a whole other podcast because
It'll be a
that's
podcast.
nuts.
Yeah.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's sad. Yeah, I remember I had a boss one time who, as soon as she had her baby, was like, I'm on diet starts today, and then like wondered why her breast milk wasn't coming in. It's like, yeah, bro, you gotta eat.
Mm-hmm.
But like the ingrainedness of like diet culture.
Yeah. I think that sets us up for like, how we hear and see women talk about their own bodies, and not even just their shape, but like aging as a natural process. Like
Mhm.
what impact do we see that having on ourselves, on people that we work with and interact? Because even the aging, that's a hard one, where they're like fighting tooth and nail over like my skin's got to stay tight. I got to like eat all the right things because here come the arrugas, and I don't want who was it? Somebody, I can't remember. I think it was one of my tias. She was like, "Don't look at my hands." I'm like, I knew you as somebody that loved your hands. Somebody that I don't know why I have this like memory ingrained so much. It's like not even anything meaningful, but
Mm-hmm.
it was when somebody was in the hospital. We went to go visit. I was in the waiting room and my tia grabbed my hand and she was like, "Oh, your hands are so beautiful. You could like be a hand model." I was like 12 and I was like, "Okay." But then her now say, "Oh my God, like don't look at them because she has sunspots." And I'm like, to me, I'm like, I don't know. I think sunspots are so cute and beautiful. Like it's so like puts into perspective what things other people value that you have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Or the value they hold on to from a past compliment. Like, okay, that's my worth. My hands are great. Oh no, it's changing now.
Right. We again, same thing with like clients. We see that a lot where they were smaller and then they had gained weight. And that where they might have been complimented for how they looked before and then are like no longer complimented in the same way now, and like the grief that comes with that, right? Like that's what I think about of like how people talk about their bodies is really like grief related, where it's like I no longer look like this 21-year-old version of myself, and literally having to tell clients like that was 12 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't look like you looked like 12 years ago, especially when you were like in puberty, basically still like just fresh out of puberty.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to look like you looked at 18 or 21, or even when I get like mid 20 clients, they're like, "Yeah, but I weighed da 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 da." And I'm like, "Yeah, when you were 16, bro. You know how much has happened since you were 16?" Like really having to be like, again, the grief of like, this is what I looked like then, and I don't look like this now. But everybody on Instagram has like their whole face done at 60 and they look younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And like how people compete with that kind of. And like I forgot where I listened to it, but they talked about like beauty being like a social class issue. And I was like, damn. Yeah, like a
Why is
social
that so
class.
true? It's like they
And it's
say, like you're not, this is gonna sound horrible, but I've seen it where it's like, well, you're not ugly, you're just poor.
Yeah. And like how like the ultra wealthy have always differentiated themselves from the lower class. And so like either where it was like those like big wigs, right? Like the white hair, even though like that, like now people are like dyeing their hair so they don't have white hair, which is kind of funny.
Yeah,
Or like even right. Or even like Sabrina String's book where it's like they wanted to be so far from the black body, this is where like that like diminishing effect happened and people were wearing like corsets and tight things opposed to like back I don't know what century, but like the women were more voluptuous, and that was seen as the ideal or like as a symbol of wealth.
Yeah.
And now it
Because you
just
had
like
food.
and I don't know too much about, but I know they've been talking more recently about like the correlation between like recession era and like thinness. And like how we're seeing like that, like like when there was the recession in whatever the 90s or the early 2000s, that like heroin chic was back, and then and now again it's like coming right back in. That's something I just want to learn more about, but I think it's that same thing of like when and how people start talking about their bodies, whereas like 5 maybe 10 years ago people are like body positivity and like it's okay to look this size, and like right now we're not in that phase anymore.
Yeah.
I know there are women in the world that are like, well, fuck that. We're doing this. And I think there was like a mix of people growing up who had a little bit of both, like a mix of women who were just like, we're not even talking about weight. Like I remember maybe she did in her own private time, but I remember when I was around her, she was a bigger woman, and I never heard her say a negative thing about her body or her weight. She was always cooking. I was always eating over there. Like there was never like, here's a diet plate of food, or even like it was always like beans, rice, a protein, or even just like little bean burritos that I'd go and like snatch.
That sounds bomb. I want one.
It was. She made the best beans.
Or a soft taco.
Soft tacos. Yeah, she made a bunch of food. But yeah, I think, yeah, same thing, kind of like the generational impact of like how women talk about their bodies then versus now. And like, I think especially just with like diet, like the GLP ones coming are just more prominent of like, we're going back to grief of like people are losing figures that were like women empowerment, body positivity figures. They're now losing weight and people are having grief about that. Their grief is expressed as hatred, which I don't think is right, but like it's grief nonetheless of like these people who were telling me that I was good enough are now no longer looking like me or representing me. And like there's this like sense of not rejection but like abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
That's a good
that's been
point.
interesting to like watch too, of like those women that are in our social realm,
Mm-hmm.
how that has changed.
It's
Yeah.
hard to stay grounded when you have so much noise that gets louder in that. I think
Mhm.
that's a good example of a strong woman or Latina
Mhm.
of like the best you can, even when you're feeling the grief. Like I'm still sticking with my daily needs, with my food, with my
Mhm.
love of myself as it changes.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is
And
there
I know this
anything
is
that?
oh,
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I know this isn't necessarily a question that we wrote, but what Nico said of like if that is the case, like if we have like kind of like the positive part, like how can the women, like how can you find women in your life who talk about their own bodies aging and weight that have a positive impact on you,
Mhm.
right? Because I know we've been kind of talking about like the problematics with our
Mm-hmm.
culture, but like that made me think of like, well, yeah, there are people who are like, no, fuck that.
Yep.
Like we're not going to talk about weight, and regardless if they're more like outspoken, like fuck that, or if they just like how I think of like my neighbor who just like did.
Mhm.
There was never like talk about. She never was like, oh, I don't do diets. It was just like she just didn't do diets, as far as I knew.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She just was.
I
Yeah.
think that's really important for us to kind of reflect on, and perhaps we could leave that with our viewers, right? Of like, we've talked about some of the negative, but who are those positive people in your life that, have been really guiding you through those hard times or have been, challenging those negative, stereotypes that we've been facing, especially as Latinas in this ever-changing world that's not built for us. But we, appreciate everybody for being here for the soft talk on Sin Dieta. And I think that's a wrap.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.